looks like we should be good to go, Mark, if you want to.
Yeah, let's call this meeting to order. I know DJ sent out some information, which included our minutes for September. So if people had a chance to check that out, we can get an approval done. So if anybody needs a minute or so, just let me know. All right, anybody want me to hold off, or should we have a motion? All right, can we have a motion to approve the minutes?
I make a motion to approve the minutes.
Yes. Very good. All right, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Any abstain? Motion passes. Minutes are, yes, minutes are accepted. All right. So you kind of control the helm there, DJ, so why don't you take it away?
Yeah, sure. So I know we start with our public comments typically, and this conversation we'll start with the Fairhaven Dock. That came originally from some residents, some concerns about trash down at the Fairhaven Dock, some concerns about some behavior, just some of the rules, regulations down at the dock, which had a very busy season. As a committee, back in June, we discussed, and then back in August, we had come to a decision to ask the governing body to go with a carry in, carry out trash policy at the Fairhaven Dock, in hopes that that would lower trash, some littering, things like that we're seeing down there. The council had some discussions at their September or August meeting rather, and they wanted us to kind of discuss some of the pros and cons of that. With some input from Chief McGovern, who's been a member of our police department for 20 some odd years, and Greg Cannon as well, our borough attorney. Just some things to consider there. Also, Chief wanted to touch on just some of the do's and don'ts down at the dock, and just some different things that we've seen down there. You know, we had a lot of visitors to the dock this year, in town, out of town, and I know that Chief, I'll ask you to unmute, and if you just want to speak to that bit, and then we can open up the committee, and Greg, feel free to hop in.
Yeah, you know, over the years, you know, DJ, I guess fortunately, unfortunately, I'm here 35 years, and I lived in town for about 34. I mean, I've been down to that dock. When my kids were little, we used to go down there, you know, Mark, right? You go down there and stay overnight, and everybody was always pretty respectful. I never saw any real issues. Over the last couple of years, it seemed to become an issue where we got some complaints, like rude behavior, people sleeping out there. I don't know if they were actually sleeping or there was more like the moms and dads were crabbing and the kids were sleeping in sleeping bags. The only thing I really saw as far as that, but there was a family down there that was having a little cookout down there a couple weeks ago. But Greg actually brought up a good point when we were talking about the council. And the reason it's a lot this year is because of dead fish. So because of the dead fish, crabbing is obviously much better this year. So it's even worse than normal. But only thing I wanted to say, I'll say something about the trash. This is more my opinion, I guess, more than even a police officer as a resident. But I just think that carry in, I think you're going to have, my opinions, I think you see a pile of trash put where the garbage cans used to be. People are going to tie up their bags. They're just going to leave their thing there. I think the opposite is to have more trash pickup if possible and maybe more cans, you know. But I just think if you get rid of that, I think people are going to throw stuff in the river or literally wherever the garbage cans are now, you're just going to see a pile of garbage. That's what I think is going to happen. So I think if the easier you make it for people to get rid of the garbage is better. The more cans you put, the easier you put it. If you put it on the dock, I think people will after that. But as far as the problems down there, you know, over the years, you know, in August, beginning September, we've always had some calls there, but they're nothing illegal. There's very few noise complaints, and noise complaints usually from the high school kids on Friday nights. That's what noise complaints are. As far as the crabbing and fishing, the families at night, I don't believe there were any. If there were, very few. Our officers go down there a couple times a night, a couple times a day. And yes, it's been busy, but we haven't seen anything, we'll say, illegal. Maybe people not being so much respectful as they should, but there was a report of a guy being drunk down there. We went down there. I mean, there's obviously no open container drinking that we saw, because obviously that would be a problem. And nobody obviously drunk. That doesn't mean there are people down there that sneak a drink or come down there drinking, but there's nothing that nobody was disorderly or acting drunk when we were there. So talking with the borough attorney, Greg, we were just saying that we just want to watch that we don't come up with an ordinance that is not able to enforce. Like, we don't want to say only Fairhaven residents, 'cause that was brought up. I heard that. I don't know where, like, oh, Fairhaven residents, you can't do that because my officer's not gonna go down there and say, you look like you're from Fairhaven. We're gonna ask for ID. Not happening, right? We would never do that. Never do that. And so we just make sure we respect everybody's rights. That's what I'm saying. I'm not here. I mean, I don't think we should restrict it at all, but we can't restrict it in that way. We could talk about hours, but again, the problem might fix itself. It might just kind of go away. Maybe next year the crabbing won't be as good, but in 30 years, we've always had a little bit of a problem. This year just seems to be a little more. And I think it's because of like the dead fish, people out of work, COVID, people have a lot more time on their hands. So I just don't want, my suggestion is that, again, it's not my decision, but just don't do anything drastic until we see if this kind of fixes itself. But we have increased patrol down there. The guys have to log it when they go down there. And I can look and say, on average, they go twice a day or at night. We haven't seen anything really disorderly or something. We got some complaints, but for some reason, people decide to call and complain 2 days later and say, hey, when I was there on Tuesday, I saw this, but nobody called. But again, most of the complaints have been more people being rude, I guess is the best way to explain it. Not so much illegal. And we haven't seen anything that was, we would say 100% illegal. There were some kids like sleeping in a sleeping bag while their parents were crabbing. Again, I don't know if that's really a violation because the kid was sitting there laying on the bench sleeping. But anyway, that was my thoughts. And I just, suggest, and like I said, Mr. Cannon can probably go a little further. You just want to make sure we don't change a law or ordinance that really just isn't enforceable or just isn't legal. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe.
Yeah, I'll chime in to help frame the discussion with the chief. So the important thing to remember about the waterfront is that the municipality is subject to what's called the public trust doctrine. Can't just because a lot of public money is invested in the waterfront. For example, on the borough attorney of Bradley Beach, there are very specific published written guidelines about access to the water. Obviously, in the beachfront is a little bit a different scenario as the riverfront, but the public trust doctrine indeed applies. And so we can't obviously discriminate in the normal ways you think about as to race, religion, things like that. But we also can't discriminate as to residency. I do share, like I said, I've worked in Bradley Beach. I'm a councilman in the town of Aberdeen, where we have a waterfront that's on Raritan Bay, which is populated by a lot of fishermen. It's when you can't discriminate as to residency, it's hard to enforce a responsible carry out policy, because people you're just not going to find if that's what's happening. But in terms of the regulations, I mean, it's your public property, just like any other park. So hours, no open containers, and a lot of that stuff's already codified. But posting regulations and the things you see it. I mean, you guys have all been to the waterfront, so you have a pretty good idea of what the standard operating procedure is for this sort of thing. But the only thing that you need to worry about legally is really the public trust doctrine and making sure there's public access to the waterfront at a public location. But other than that, you're pretty much free to run your public parks the way you see fit.
All right. Thanks, Greg.
So I have a question.
Go ahead.
I understand because of Green Acres, anybody is welcome to use our docks. I understand that. But do we have any control in terms of parking or limiting the hours for crabbing? Or fishing, not necessarily crabbing, fishing from the pier? Do we have any control?
Yes, if you go, and the locations. So if you say that this side of the dock is for people who are sunning themselves and this side of the dock is for the people that are crabbing, you can go down to Keyport or the fishing pier, almost any fishing pier, and there's posted locations for fishing, and there's places where you're not allowed to fish or crab, and all that's within obviously your control. It's just about access. The activities, the reasonable restrictions on activities or locations are perfectly okay.
Hey,
But-
Betsy,
but
I'm
do
just curious.
we-
What's, I guess, sort of your thought behind that question is, has there been problems with interaction between people who are using it just to kind of be there and those who are doing the fishing? Are we concerned about
Yes,
dangers with casting and hooks and things?
yes. And we had, and DJ, I'm sure you can attest to this. We had a letter from an email from a resident who and it wasn't a resident, told them he had a license to fish there and they weren't welcome on the dock and wouldn't let them on the dock.
Yeah, I did see that email come through, and I think that's partially why Chief McGovern is on the call to speak about those things. And I don't know how much of that you can legislate out. Unfortunately, not everyone's going to be as nice and cordial as they should to each other. And as Chief mentioned, when something like that happens, I believe the police department would recommend calling the police department so they can get that squashed right away. But I do have record of that.
Yeah. I mean, I'm wondering if we couldn't just limit the hours of fishing off the dock from an hour after sunset to an hour before sunset. I mean, how many people are actually down there in the middle of the night?
There are a few, and like I said, and I know because like my kids, we would do that. And Councilman Koch, that's the only problem. That's fine, but you gotta remember that residents can't go there either. Then we have to. It's not like
Right.
it's got to be everybody. But if we limit one side or the other, I don't know if that's really going to help the problem, because it sounds like people aren't. The complaints are there's just people down there crabbing or fishing and being rude. I don't know if that would change with it being one section or the other, because it's not that big. Like Keyport, like Greg said, I've been there. It's like huge. So you have a lot of areas. Fish here, crab here. In there, it's very small.
Your mobile device is still in
It'd be a little bit tough to do that.
The other thing I want to mention too, as you go through this process, is you're never going to be able to legislate every situation. And that's why the chief's officers have broad discretion in enforcement as well. The old paper bag rule, right? So if there's two guys fishing down, quietly fishing at midnight, because that's when the tide comes in, and the police go down there, they're probably not going to kick them out, right? But if there's 10 people down there and the rules are posted, then the police have the ability to do something about it. So it's really this is more about tools than trying to write something that fits every situation, if that makes sense. So when you post the signs, the police have the ability to enforce them or leave the two senior citizens quietly fishing at high tide at 1 o'clock in the morning alone. So you have to think of it that way as well. Your police officers are smart guys.
Right.
They can help do it too.
And then if you have a complaint, and you have a little teeth when you go down there, because right now you have a complaint and there's really no ordinance or, rules posted. But if you have ordinance and or rules, then you have something when it gets out of hand, you can tell everybody they got to leave. Absolutely. Like what Greg just said.
I apologize because I'm actually not sure. Are there any restrictions on the time there now, like we have with our parks, or potentially, sunset to sunrise?
Yeah, Mark, I don't believe so. And like there's some stuff posted down there. I don't know right now without going down and looking, but I know that we had a problem with people jumping off the dock, and I don't think that was posted. And obviously it shouldn't be, but at least post it, because we go down there. They stop, but at the same time, if it's posted, you can be like, hey, the sign's there, and maybe we could put something at the end of the dock if we want to stop something. Just not put one sign and make it pretty obvious. You're not gonna get everybody to stop, but maybe it would help a little bit. But again, hopefully, next year we won't have all these dead fish. Maybe we won't even have this problem.
Yeah, honestly, I think some of this is sort of almost like a perfect storm of some of this stuff happening with the dead fish, with people being cooped up for so long, you talk about people being rude. I mean, I experienced that all summer long, with my summer job, where people just forgot how to socially interact with each other.
Well, even at the fair this year, I've never seen kids as rude.
Yeah.
Dumping in lines, doing stupid stuff. It's, they kids do stupid things, but this year was definitely times 10. So.
Yeah, sure. So I'll throw that to the committee. And Betsy or Councilman Koch or Councilman Chris or Keith, at the meeting, at the council meeting when this was discussed, did you want the recreation committee to kind of reconsider the request, or has this been exhausted by the committee in terms of, or the governing body in terms of the request that the committee made to have carry out situation? Did you want to discuss that again with additional considerations, or where do you want us to go with that?
Well, the carry in, carry out was just a suggestion by me to try to alleviate the trash problem that the local residents in that neighborhood were complaining about. I'm not so sure adding more trash cans would, number one, be visually effective or visually appealing. And I think part of the problem is people don't even use it. They just drop their stuff there. I know that the national parks, the state parks, and the county parks have been effective with their carry in, carry out policy. That's just my personal opinion. In terms of the usage of the dock, I like the fact that Greg considered the fact that our police would have some discretion in enforcing sundown to sunrise in terms of population at the docks. But it's really up to the committee. I can only present options. It's the committee that really has to decide. I don't have a vote. So, I mean, you guys need to discuss it and decide what's best for the residents of Fairhaven.
Okay, understood. Any thoughts, Meg?
Yeah, I'll jump in for a sec. I think my thoughts are that, I'd be inclined to think adding additional trash cans may remedy the issue and might be worth trying. And if that's unsuccessful and only results in, like Councilman Koch suggests, trash just, sitting there and they're not being utilized, then I would be inclined to then go the complete opposite direction and see if a carry in, carry out policy might work. I'm just imagining, even some of the fishing and crabbing, you have a piece of leftover bait or a line that's got to be tossed. If you don't have a bag to put it in, I just don't want things to end up in the river unnecessarily. And so I'd be inclined to say, give them more trash receptacles first, see if that works. And if it doesn't, then go the opposite direction. That would be my suggestion. And I agree that potentially limiting the hours for fishing and crabbing with the obvious discretion of our officers might be an effective way to address what we've been seeing this summer.
Hey, Chief of Governor or Attorney Cannon, would there be a suggestion on the limitation of time? If the committee said, yeah, we want to limit time. Would there be precedent for that in surrounding towns or communities that you'd be aware of or that you would suggest?
I don't know about surrounding towns in the same situation. I think sunrise, sunset might be a little bit early. Maybe sunrise to 9 or 10 o'clock, I think would be more reasonable because people are out there when it gets dark to crab and stuff. But that's just my opinion. I don't know what other towns have, if they even have that.
Hey, DJ, in terms of the trash, how many receptacles do we have there now?
So typically we have anywhere between 6 and 8 total. This year we added a couple extras. You can see the added use, the added trash. We actually had one float away. I don't know if it was kids or what, but it ended up on the other side of the Navasink and they actually returned it. So yeah, I mean, we've added trash cans. We can continue to add them. I think a worthwhile discussion for the council representatives on the call might be, is there a possibility of a weekend pickup during the summer months? Because what I've seen, I know we have concerts down there, things like that, but I'll go, on a Monday morning just to do a facilities check, and these things are overloaded and they're full. So I imagine on a Saturday, on a Sunday is when they probably get the most use, and to have them full with, fish guts and old chicken, things like that. Obviously, it doesn't smell great, but it's going to attract flies. It's going to, just make it an unattractive area. So I think adding cans can certainly help. How many trash cans do you want to have on a dock? That's not that big. Do you want to have 20 cans out there? I don't know. But I think that's a possible solution. And I'd want to see if in the contract we have with our trash collection company, if that's something that could be added in there.
That's actually kind of, I guess, where I was going with my questioning, wondering, is that the solution, or is it more frequent collection, or is it a combination?
Yeah, so I think it's a combination. I know that the contract is tough to change once you're in the contract. I'm not sure. Mr. Cannon might know when our contract is up for renewal or for a new trash disposal contract, but I think that'd be something to consider. I kind of like the
We
idea.
just,
I was just gonna say, I kind of like the idea of adding a couple in, seeing how it goes. And again, if we keep adding and adding and it doesn't work, the removal and the carry in, carry out could work. I know the committee was in favor of trying that. So again, like Councilman Mccarter said, if the committee wants to make a suggestion back to the governing body, we can certainly have them entertain that.
DJ, it's Kevin. Can I make a comment?
Sure, hop in.
So, I wasn't at the last meeting when the vote. I'm not for the carry in, carry out, because I do think it presents more issues. I think we would have piles of trash there. But I guess my question is, what's the cost of a fine for littering in our town? And is it something that we can enforce a little bit more? Just because
We lost your audio, Kev.
Fairhaven.
Hey, Kev, can you hear us?
Can everybody hear me?
You're
Yeah,
kind
we
of
lost
cutting in and out.
you.
Okay. No, I know someone who got a fine for dog off the leash at Fairhaven Fields. And it really resonated within, our circle of residents. And, it was very effective. What's the, is it signed as far as what fines could be for littering at the dock? And, could we increase them to, put a sign out to increase fines for littering to maybe, help prevent people from littering and people get the message, or at least if someone is caught littering or whatever, hopefully there's a way to, just prevent people. This is a problem in all of our, the garbage cans getting overflown is a problem really in all of our parks. It's not really just, I'm sure the dock is worse because obviously, the river is something that we want to protect. But, I guess the question is, can we try to, increase fines, or is there any legal way that, that we can, enforce something like that?
Hey, Kevin, I would agree. I think, you get a few fines out there, hit a few pocketbooks and it starts to definitely have an impact and word gets around. But I'm not sure. I think the problem with that is in order to, give a fine, you have to actually, I guess, catch them in the act. And I'm not sure that that's something that's going to be easy to happen. If the timing's right, the timing's right. But I think the enforcing of that could be tough.
Yeah. No, I agree.
Well, like Kevin said, if you sign it, which Kevin, I actually don't know what the fine is. I would imagine it's between $1,500. I really don't know.
I think it's too cheap. I'm pretty sure the payable fine for littering is currently $200.
Okay. But if you sign it and warn it, maybe people will think twice. Like Mark said, it's hard to, oh, kids littering, you got to be there. The thing, and they think they're going to litter when you're standing there. Also, would be kind of tough to think it all work out. We're not only going to put guys undercover there to see if we get somebody littering. So, but maybe if we, like Kevin said, if you sign it, so people are like, oh shoot, it's $200 or whatever it is. That might, maybe you get a couple people trying to not litter, maybe.
Within your guys' municipal jurisdiction, you have the ability to do two things. One, you have the ability to make the littering in the parks a non-payable offense, so it's court appearance required, and you can post signs to that effect. Also, most a lot of waterfronts at the beach, you'll see it's up to $1,000 fine. So you can certainly have enhanced fines and make it a non-payable offense. Those are basically what's in. And I picked $1,000 out of the air because I've seen that one before. But your maximum fine is $2,000 for any given violation in a municipal court. Otherwise, people get to go to it's a larger penalty. It's a consequence of magnitude, and they go to the upper court. So those are the limits of your authority. You can go up to $2,000, which is obviously a significant amount of money. You have court appearance required. But, you have the ability to do that, and that's basically the limits of what your jurisdiction is.
Great, thanks for that info. And just to, I see a hand raised, I'll call on that in a sec. Is the issue more, and I guess I'll throw it back to Betsy or Mark here, is the issue more that people are littering and throwing stuff at the dock, or is it more that the trash is just at a level at which we can't keep up with, we don't have enough receptacles, and then we see some trash maybe flying around the beach because people are trying to throw it out, but the cans are so full? I just want to get to the root of what we're discussing.
I think it's a combination of both. Not enough cans, the trash is overflowing. And nobody has probably a place to put their trash, so they just throw it on the ground. They don't take it with them.
Okay, I'm going to call on a resident here, Jamie Stozer. I believe I'm saying it correct. If not, let me know. But here we go.
Yeah, you said it correctly. Thank you. I'm sorry to interrupt. I don't have the agenda in front of me because I don't think I saw it, but I was, this is the exact same topic I was here tonight to comment on for the community center, in addition to some other concerns being, I'm a resident that's close to that area. That was actually one of the things I was here, and it's the exact same conversation about the receptacles being overflowing. And so I find this fascinating, by the way. Thank you for having me. This is the first time I've come. And all of this is so relevant, and I didn't even think about the dock, so I'm happy to listen to that conversation as well. But the community center is the same issue with the receptacles. So I don't know if that's further along the agenda, but I had some thoughts on that there too. And this is obviously a relevant conversation for a lot of the public areas in town, it sounds like.
Yeah, so we don't have the trash specifically as it relates to the community center on the agenda. So this would be a good time to comment on that. We will comment and discuss some potential upgrades to the community center later on. It's actually the next item on our agenda once we get through this one. But yeah, feel free to offer thoughts on what you've seen at the community center as far as trash goes in this portion, and we're happy to facilitate that discussion.
Awesome. Yeah. And I think there's some other, I know this is as a webinar, we can't see who else is here, but I did spread my little PR wings and told some friends to join that tend to go to the community center because they live in our area or they have young kids that are there. The trash there, it's commented on obviously all the time on Fairhaven moms and dads, but I was like, you know what? I'm not going to do that. I'm going to go to the right place, which is here. The trash situation there is just disgusting. It's always overflowing. There's always flies. There's always stuff on the ground. A friend of mine that's on the call, I can let her speak as well, but the other day her kids were about to go on the tennis court and they couldn't go on it because there was broken glass on it. You know, and the trash conversation, of course, is very relevant. And then the other concerns we had was, you know, was just around the entire upkeep of the community center field. I mean, playground and the weeds and the tennis court. And, you know, I know that there's some in the basketball, one of the basketball ones, the courts that's closer to the police station is bulging from the ground because of a root. So I know that there's potential plans for an upgrade. I'm not even here tonight to talk about an upgrade, although that would be lovely. And I know Tina worked hard to get some new equipment there. It was just about around the upkeep of the community center park because our kids are all playing rec baseball there. A lot of the kids are always around there and it's just really overgrown and very messy. So I just wanted to come here tonight to voice those concerns. I live on Church Street, so I'm just around the corner. My kids go there now alone. And it's just not amazing. And I just wanted to come tonight to see if there's anything I can do to help move the community to make changes there or what the update might be on why it doesn't get the same kind of attention that the Fairhaven Fields gets or other, you know, public areas in town.
Yeah, sure. So I'll hop on that. And I was actually talking to Mark Mancuso, who's our committee president, earlier today. The parks the last couple of months just haven't, in my opinion, been getting the upkeep that they deserve. You know, we've got work orders in with our guys at Department of Public Works to try to get on top of things. It's just a really busy season between lining for the different sports, the high school teams, getting the Noble teams ready to go, short-staffed on some different things, some COVID related, some not, but definitely something that is important for us to get a handle on. You know, I grew up right across from that park, spent countless hours and days there. The last thing I want to see is a park that's, you know, near and dear to me and a lot of people in the committee and people in town not get the upkeep that it deserves. So I think an email could go a long way. I could forward that on to different people here in town, government body members, and we could really, you know, put that in the forefront and make that a focus of our public works team, who, you know, they have a lot on their plate. But at the end of the day, I think our parks deserve to be maintained, and people move here and live here so they can take advantage of things like that. So that's my input. I'll turn it over to Mark and then council members if you want to comment, and committee members.
Yeah, I would basically say, you know, I second what you're saying there. I think a big part of it actually is that DPW is getting somewhat overwhelmed with everything that has to happen, and the fact that there's often instances where they might be shorthanded if somebody, you know, has to go out, they get sick, or we have some people who are there on a more, I guess, sort of, I don't know how you would say it, DJ, like part-time or sort of as needed basis. And sometimes they get called away for something else. And so we end up, I mean, if we're only talking, what, 7 people on the crew and you lose 1 or 2, it really makes a big difference. So I think a lot of that is playing into what we're seeing, but I definitely echo what DJ is saying, that I think we all feel that, you know, I guess the level of the maintenance of the parks has been suffering somewhat lately, but I'm hoping that as things kind of calm down with seasons sort of getting more on autopilot, things already haven't been done. And I have no idea what the situation is as far as the staffing goes, but if that can be improved, you know, I think we can kind of get things back to where they need to be.
Sure. Yeah, definitely appreciate that, and I would agree. Council members, any comment here? And then I know I have a couple hands raised here.
Well, one of the things I was going to suggest tonight is the replacement of the broken slide. I think that has a lot to do with it. Am I correct? DJ, the slide
Yeah,
that
definitely something that needs to get replaced. And
So-
you know, to Jamie's credit, and again, Jamie, thank you for coming and speaking to us instead of, you know, posting it somewhere and then we don't get to hear about it firsthand from you. I think Jamie's more talking about right now is just the general upkeep, weeds,
Right,
trash.
that's what I'm leading into. I'm thinking if we can propose to the council that we use a capital expenditure and replace that slide, and then do some maintenance in the area around it to clean up the park, I think that would go a long way. In terms of the tennis courts and the basketball court, that's really kind of on hold, I think, until the facilities committee decides exactly what they're going to do with that area. So I don't know right at this moment in time if it would be prudent for us to invest any money into that, but we certainly can clean up the grounds and look at the weeds and make it a much more appealing area and a place where our kids want to play.
Yeah, and Councilwoman Koch, do you think, as we talked about, our guys they have a lot of work to do. If council or the borough administrator could authorize overtime to get some of these regular maintenance items done, because, you know, to Jamie's point, it's a park, the basics should at least be done. Is that something
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I think it's kind of fallen by the wayside, and we need to divert the attention of the DPW back to that area. So once we come up with a plan tonight, whether we're going to talk about the slide or we're going to talk about maintenance of the area, we can present them with a plan at the next council meeting. You and I can draw that up together.
Great.
And ask for, if it's overtime, or ask them to dedicate 1 or 2 people on a Thursday, Friday, a couple of days during the week to really work on improving the area.
One thing that I just wanted to add was in regards to the mulch, that really needs to be prioritized immediately. We have about mid-calf is how much grass and weeds are coming through the mulch. And really that presents a huge safety issue. If any kid falls off of a swing, falls off of the playground equipment, they're more liable to get hurt because we don't have enough padding and cushioning there when it comes to mulch. So the DPW really needs to prioritize that and get that taken care of because of the heavy rains that we've had and the overuse that we've had with it being summer and kids being out of school, there is really like next to nothing mulch there. So we're really leaving ourselves liable for, to having one of our children get hurt.
We will definitely include that on our to-do list.
Right. I think certainly a focus should be first and foremost on the safety aspect. And you know what, if that sort of then comes back and helps with the visual appeal of it, great. But that's got to be first and foremost.
I'll hop over. The first hand I saw resident is Betsy Williamson. So Betsy, you're unmuted if you'd like to go ahead.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm the one Jamie referred to with the glass. We live on the corner of Cedar and Fisk. There is not once, I mean, my kids are little, they're not playing real tennis. So we, often go over there just to hit the ball back and forth, and they're not allowed to go there anymore. There's always a lot of glass. And in addition, just, it's unkempt, is that the right word? Like, as far as the weeds, all that goes, everything Jamie touched on. We just started fostering dogs, and I've never had a dog before, but I can't imagine everyone in this town that has dogs. It's like you have to be on constant alert walking them around community fields, because there's constantly something, not just regular litter, but like dangerous things. I did have one thought. When I was younger, I had a speeding ticket, and my sentence, whatever you want to call it, was community service. Is it possible, either at the docks or at the fields, or when any of the officers are doing rounds and catch someone littering, is it possible to have, instead of a fine or a higher fine, because let's be honest, some people in this community don't care if they lose $100 for a fine, and some people do. I think if kind of like an eye for an eye, maybe the I don't want to say punishment, but maybe they get an hour of community service cleaning up one of the areas that's a problem, and it also raises full awareness. I promise you, once you go to a beach cleanup or a park cleanup, you notice these things when you're around and they bother you, and you might pick them up even in your spare time.
I can answer the community service, DJ, if that's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, we actually do that. We usually send them up to the Borough Garage. They do assist Borough Garages. Right now there is nobody, and because of COVID, all that stuff is kind of put on hold. But that is a great idea. Like I said, I don't think we have anybody right now because of COVID. They haven't sent us to anybody. But when we do have somebody community service, that's what they do. They wash buildings. Literally wash the building or parking lot. They do work at Borough Garage. I don't think they've had anybody in 2 years now because of COVID. But we absolutely would do that if we had somebody. Correct.
Or they definitely.
Is it typical that you'll find someone littering, you'll catch them in the act? Is that something that can be done, or is that uncommon?
I would say it's pretty uncommon to find somebody like littering in front of you. I'm not saying it never happens, but I would say that's probably uncommon. But it's not so much like the kids that are doing community service. It has to do with a whole different round of stuff. It's not so much littering. It could be anything from graffiti to, almost anything, possession of something. So, but if they get community service, we usually do send them to Borough Garage to help do tasks around the town. That is true. But
I
right
think
now,
also,
there is nobody right now. So
I think also, just in terms of not necessarily a penalty, community service for penalty, but and not that we should be relying on other groups to do what we should have the infrastructure set up to do, but certainly, your groups like your Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, environmental groups, setting up and working with them to do things. You mentioned, Betsy, like a beach sweep or something like that. To have those done occasionally as well, I think could be another way. But again, that's not something that we want to take the place of what should be happening. But maybe every so often, that's something we can utilize and kind of help keep things up. Because as you say, I think you become more aware of things when you do it that way. And also, you take a little bit more pride in what you cleaned up yourself, and you enjoy using that in that space more.
Exactly. And I think as far as I know, the high school students, maybe even some of the middle school need community service hours.
Absolutely, absolutely. You know, often you can get groups like that, Interact Club, Environmental Club, Key Club, et cetera. And you're right, because they need community service hours to maybe qualify for National Honor Society or to keep, you know, qualified, things like that.
Yeah, I'd be happy to
Doing confirmation, you need it.
I'd be happy to participate if there was like some sort of subcommittee, you know, as long as we had the resources provided, which is really, you know, gloves and bags, you know, to set more of those up during the year where the, you know, students have the opportunity to come out and help.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
These are
definitely
all,
something we
these are
could-
great ideas.
Yeah, and again, anytime, you know, I get maybe, I don't know, 4 or 5 emails a year from people, residents in town who are telling me that there's, you know, excess trash at a park or that there's glass on a basketball court. I get that message to DPW ASAP, and they typically drop what they're doing and go service that, because that is a safety hazard. So I know it's not a perfect system, and unfortunately, I think people are gonna litter from time to time, and obviously it's not right. But if that does happen and you do witness it, you can send an email to either DPW or the Recreation Department. We'll get that taken care of as quickly as possible. You know, the town can also send out additional information to residents, reminders, things like that. And I think, you know, as community members, we can talk to the young people in the community just about the importance of keeping our parks clean. I think that would also go a long way.
I think a
And
lot
Mike,
of
you know what?
It's
Also-
something like broken glass or something that presents a danger. If you text me or call me, I will get in touch with Borough Hall and see that someone goes out to clean it up.
Yeah, if we get something like that in the police department, a safety issue, you know, not so much maybe a garbage can or a full, but you know, a safety issue, we notify the road department right away, and they've even come out on weekends if it was some real safety issue. So if that's reported to the police department, you know, we would definitely report it to them. And if it's something that needed to be cleaned up right away, we would do it even if it was on a weekend. We'd call them out for it.
And honestly, DJ, another thing we could probably, you know, see if we can't, you know, put into the plan would be to work with a lot of these groups, you know, especially the sports group that use the field. I can remember with all the years and years of you know, coaching rec soccer and such, you know, at the end of a game or the end of a practice, I would always have, you know, my team basically line up across the field, you know, and do a walk and just pick stuff up. And so that'll go, I think, a long way to kind of helping. It may contribute more to overflow at the garbage cans, but, you know, the fields will at least stay cleaner.
Yeah, so we'll take that information to council when we report on these issues, and see if we can brainstorm some different things there. I'll go ahead, Kelly.
Hi, DJ.
Hey,
Hi.
Kelly.
Hello, everyone. My name is Kelly Flanagan. I am also a concerned resident. I live right on 3rd Street, right block and a half from Community Center Fields. I've got 4 young kids under the age of 8 that use the park almost daily. And I think it's such a gift and asset to this community. But I obviously express the same concerns as Jamie and Betsy as well. But I'm also speaking on behalf, I'm also the chair of the green team in town. And I know that this topic of littering, especially in the parks, has come up constantly. And I think it's not just to the, you know, singled out to the dock or singled out to community center fields. It's become quite a bit of a problem. And we've been trying to discuss it, you know, in many ways, whether it is like an anti-littering campaign, even in Knollwood, like getting in there. I remember when I was younger, it was like, don't give a hoot, don't pollute, you know, and this anti-littering, you know, information. But then I also wonder too, you know, and I've also been at the park and I've seen the glass that Betsy's referring to on the tennis courts and the bottles and the vines on the tennis court. And one of the tennis courts has been missing a net for how many years, as long as I've been here. And it almost makes me think of, you know, like the broken window theory, right? If you see a building that has a broken window, then eventually someone's going to break another window. Then you'll see graffiti on the wall, and then you're going to see litter in front of it. And I just think that if this park is unkept and not, you know, it doesn't appear to be valued, then people are going to trash it. And so I do understand Councilman Cock, where you're saying that we don't want to invest too much because we don't really know that plan. But I do think that there needs to be some type of upkeep or plan in the interim to beautify that space a little bit. And I do understand too, Mark, where you were saying maybe reaching out to the other committees. Reach out to the Shade Tree Commission. Maybe we can put some shade trees and some landscaping, because if anybody has used that park or tried to use it in the summertime or even yesterday after school, it was unbearable because there's no relief from the sun. But I do think there, it might be all connected to the littering as well. Just the way that we value it and that we perceive it, how it's perceived by the kids that are using it, the middle schoolers, and with the garbage situation. But then I also wonder too, the receptacles, both trash and recycling appear to have this small little tiny opening. Well, if you have a pizza box or a, salad container, it can't fit in there. So I've seen them on the floor next to it. Maybe looking into the type of receptacles we have. Are they even recycled? There was one time I saw them picked up and both bins were put into the same container. So, speaking from the Green Team and the Environmental Commission, it's, there could be a lot of different issues to hit at and point at. Betsy even returns to you, and you talking about park cleanups. That is something that we've definitely tried to do. I know with COVID, there was a lot of pushback with doing some of the cleanups, but now I think with things lessening up, we're hoping to get some more people involved. But I just wonder, I don't think you can pinpoint it at one thing. I think it might all be related. In terms of improving the park, there's been a tremendous amount of new families moving in this area with young kids. And I think that there could be people who would be willing to donate their time, their labor, their money or anything for the upkeep of that park as well, since it's so used regularly on a basis and it's right on 3rd Street. Kids right after school are using it on the weekends. So I also would want to say that, Mark, as you're saying, the Green Team would love to be involved, the Environmental Commission, the Shade Tree, and I think it would be great to get all committees and more voices and people together to improve this, because I don't think it's purely just a Parks and Rec issue, and so that's what I just wanted to share.
Good.
Yeah,
Good
thanks.
input.
Yeah, Mark, you can take it.
No, I was just going to say, good input. I appreciate your thoughts on that. Absolutely.
Yeah, we'll add those notes to the many that we have tonight, and we'll talk with people at Borough Hall and with the DPW supervisors to see if there's a plan in the short term and the long term that we can put together to address some of those different issues. And I think there's a lot of valid points there. Everything from the trash to how it looks to one incident leading to another that I think can be extinguished, hopefully with some good discussion and groups getting together and thinking about this thing. So I don't think it's the last we'll talk about this, but this is definitely a good jumping off point. Shannon Albino.
Yes, hi. Thank you guys so much for having me, and thank you for carrying on the conversation about it. We live on Maple. We moved here in October, and just to first, thank you for saying what the process is for if you see glass at that park. We live across the street, and we've gone over multiple times with a broom to just sweep it up so the kids can play, but it's almost too much to keep up with. We're happy to pitch in. Ultimately, the problem is the glass. Like, I think, all these other things I think are important too, to, nice. And I think, but the glass is the ultimate problem there. The most important problem really, in terms of safety. And I'm just wondering if there's a way to just ban glass bottles there, or to encourage kids not to have glass bottles there, just because it's just an ongoing, it's just constant with the glass bottles and the behavior of the kids there. It's a direct correlation to how the park is kept. So I guess it's great to know we can email in, but I'm also wondering if we can just do something to discourage glass from coming there in the first place.
I don't know if it's possible to tell, but I'm curious. Again, how would you tell? But I'm wondering, do we think that this broken glass is malicious? You know, people are breaking them, or is it just accidentally happening, or?
There's so much of it, it's hard to tell. It is like, it's constant. Like, you go over one day with a broom and sweep it up and you think like, okay, we're good. And it's constant and it's everywhere.
It's, I will
It's
agree
hard to
with
say.
Kathy. It's frightening to let my kids go over there.
Yeah, so what I would say is, obviously we need to get DPW aware of this. I don't know if they're frankly aware of it, you know, especially if it's being cleaned up and then they go to take it around and it's not there. So again, definitely anytime you see it, let us know. It's going to be on in our next discussion with DPW to let them know that this has to be a priority. I didn't know that the issue was as bad as it is. And I don't know if a lot of the Parks Committee here did either. Now that we know it is, I think it's something that will be super prevalent with as far as limiting what types of glass or plastic containers are in our different parks. I don't know if that committee is ready to make that leap right now. I'll let Mark speak on that, or Chief McGovern, as far as outlawing glass at the community center. But we'll definitely get this in front of DPW supervisors.
I'll defer to Chief McGovern as far as, you know, what might be possible with ordinances. I'm kind of surprised actually that there seems to be such a problem, because it just seems to be the shifts have really been towards, you know, I don't know, a lot of the things are going towards the plastic and the recycling plastic. You know, I think back to just like Snapple bottles and such, but apparently there's still a lot of glass out there and it's getting broken.
I don't know if you can ordinance, you know, no glass in the parks, but I think that would be a tough to even try to enforce that, hang on to even enforce that. Like Mark said, there's really not that much stuff glass anymore. So they must be drinking Snapple. It's not that bad. The only thing you can still get in glass. So maybe we should ban Snapple and take care of it. Cause I don't know how many you can really get in glass, you know, but I think it is on purpose. I don't think these kids are accidentally dropping their Snapple bottles. But, you know, like you said, you know, we're right behind it. I walk out there once in a while. I haven't seen the glass out there, or at least I haven't looked hard enough, probably. But if we get DPW out there to check it every day and make sure it's cleaned up, and then we can see how much of a problem it is. If it's every day, then obviously we're gonna have to do something to make sure we stop it. If it's not every day, then maybe it's not as much of a problem if they clean it up. But like I said, DJ will talk to Rich and we'll see what we can do out there.
I just wanted to touch on a point that Betsy, the other Betsy, made earlier. Jamie and I actually spoke about this today, just nobody wants to pour money into, you know, specifically community fields, knowing that hopefully it's going to be redone relatively quickly. Well, you know, if the process gets started quickly, at least. But when it comes to the issue of, you know, just keeping it clean and safe, I think people are, you know, willing for their money to go toward that. Also, I know that the glass bottles is preferable for green reasons, sustainable reasons, but they could also be some sort of, you know, if there was a committee to do like a fundraiser and reusable plastic bottles, you know, that say Fairhaven on them or whatever it is.
Yeah, so I think you know, that would be an initiative for Kelly and the Green Team if they want to venture down that road. I think that would be something that they could definitely consider.
What's the color of the glass? Because maybe it's like Tableau is selling Snapple bottles and that's what they're throwing. And maybe going to them and asking them not to carry glass Snapple bottles will help also alleviate part of the issue.
I think if we're being realistic speaking here, it's teenagers coming from the deli and Tableau, you know, places carrying their things that they bought there and going to the park.
And I would say also, I don't think it's malicious. I think a lot of times, and I'm sure a lot of my, you know, friends are guilty of this as well. If the teenagers are just hanging out and they all put their bottles down and forget them, like I don't think they're like spiking them on the ground. Same thing when we're at a, you know, baseball game. There's always a ton of stuff left by the bleachers. I don't think people are purposely like, oh, I don't care, I'm going to throw my, you know, my water bottle on the ground, and they just wind up leaving it because they get up to talk to somebody, the game leaves, they leave. So just if people have more awareness of that.
But I also, if I can just jump in, I think it's also you know, the DPW is overworked. I think that's also an issue. And so my concern too is when we're thinking about these other pocket parks, and this might be a larger question for the council people on here. If we're thinking about adding on to these other pocket parks, I mean, shouldn't we take care of the parks that we have existing first and make sure that they are upkept? And whether that means like the trash receptacles are emptied on a more frequently basis. But I do think that it's very confusing. Each trash and recycler, I don't know which one's trash and recycling. They both have a tiny little like beverage container hole. And I don't think it's very like intuitive to know which one's which. And some of these things might not fit in there. So I also think that could be a part too.
Thank you.
Yeah, whoever was saying about the bottles left there, I would agree, because some of those bottles are probably left, and then other kids come by and see the bottles there and they're tossing them around, or who knows, they're probably using them as a tennis ball, you know, and hitting them and stuff. So if those bottles weren't left, if we get DPW there to get rid of that extra trash, those bottles laying around, that alone could probably maybe get rid of 50% of it, because some of it might not be the kids that left it, it's the kids that come behind them, and kids will use them, as they're using them as tennis balls or something. Who knows what they're doing?
Target practice.
Thanks, Chief. Yes, that's a lot of good info. We'll get that all back to DPW and we'll discuss with the borough administrator. There's some more manpower. We get the word out on social media, on the borough website, things like that, to see what we can do to try to curtail some of the waste, trash, litter that we're seeing out there. And, it could be an ongoing discussion, but this is definitely a good place for it to start. We'll circle back to the dock, to the Mark and the Recreation Committee. Where do you want to leave it tonight as far as the request for the governing body to consider the carry in, carry out? Do we want to kind of circle back to it? See how it goes?
I'll just kind of put it out there informally right now. I'm thinking what I hear, or what kind of the consensus is, that people are more inclined to not necessarily be in favor of the carry in, carry out, but in terms of just more receptacles, and if possible, kind of more pickup at this point. If anybody says I'm kind of wrong on that sense, let me know.
And you're speaking to committee members right now, correct?
Yes. So who do we have? We have Kate and Kevin still with us.
Yeah,
And I'm
Rachel's on.
here, and so not to add another layer or wrinkle or whatever, is yes, I think trying these things sounds good. I honestly, personally think it doesn't have to be a one size fits all. I wouldn't mind seeing receptacles at the dock to address what we've already been discussing, and a carry in, carry out at Mccarter Park to, it's true, because we could spend a lot of money on very innovative and smart receptacles at Mccarter and at Community Center and elsewhere, or those may be populations that could handle a carry in, carry out policy at those parks. And the pizza boxes, if they come into the park, they leave the park. So I'd kind of like to see a variable approach. Doesn't need to be discussed now, but I'd like it to be considered.
Okay, so as you said, not a kind of one size fits all, but take a look at maybe who the demographic is at each park and make somewhat of a decision based on that.
Sounds like a hybrid.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay.
So we can
Because
report
it's true.
back.
It's true that the trash receptacles we have right now at the parks don't fit all the trash that are there. The pizza boxes being the case, but and if a carry in, carry out at some of those parks could be part of that solution without adding an extra expense. In a way, I'd rather spend the money. I mean, I know it's grant money, but it'd be nice to spend the money on a water fountain for reusable bottles than on fancy trash receptacles. Again, just a thought.
Mm-hmm.
Can you guys hear me okay? It's Kevin.
Go ahead, Kev. Yeah.
So I guess I'm trying to think how many years I've been on the committee now, and this has been a conversation that we've had many, many times. And hearing from the people that live around 3rd Street and the community center, obviously there's, some issues going on, and I've seen the same at Mccarter Park. I don't think it's the amount of trash receptacles. I think we have plenty. I think people are, for lack of a better term, they're lazy. They'll pile garbage on top of a full garbage can rather than walk 50 feet to a garbage can that's completely empty. And that's just a fact of the matter. One thing I would possibly recommend, if anybody would be up to this, it sounds like it's one of the biggest complaints and issues that we get year in and year out. Do we take some of the funds that we get as a recreation committee and put it toward some type of extra cleanup, whether it's incenting people to volunteer to clean up the parks? I just think it's every park. It's pretty much happens at most of our parks that we love and treasure. So I think it's either we get creative and say, okay, maybe we have, you know, like right now, yeah, we love a water fountain, but nobody's really, I'm not hearing people complain about a water fountain. I'm hearing people complain about the trash. So is there a way to, you know, form a, you know, take some of our money and have people, I guess you could call it volunteers, but compensate them for taking shifts to walk through some of our parks and actually help clean up, but give them some incentive to actually do that and maybe pay them, whether it's a young kid, if there's something almost like a scholarship thing. If the Green Committee would like to get involved and we had money that we could contribute, and you got young people to go through the park on a Sunday morning or a Saturday morning with sticks and garbage bags and clean up, I think that would be more effective and you'd have less complaints than trying to.
Nope, I think we lost your audio. Hello, Kevin.
Yeah, Kev, we lost you there. That's definitely something that you know, we can talk about and consider. And you know, if we want to put recreation money, the little money that we get, you know, on an annual basis towards that, you know, maybe that's what the committee wants to do. But again, you know, it comes down to, I think, personal responsibility, mixing with, you know, the borough providing the proper outlets for people to dispose of trash. And I know that we're not the only community that deals with trash in parks. So I think reaching out to other towns and seeing what they do. You know, if there's volunteer groups, I think they're always welcome to pick up trash. We're never going to turn them away. So that's my input on that. Thank you, have you back.
I guess one thing we can consider, DJ, is it, you know, worth it to take some funds, which I would hope would not amount, you know, to too much, to sort of, you know, seed these and get these groups, you know, interested in doing it, you know, just in terms of, you know, maybe buying some gloves, providing some donuts and coffee, and, you know, kind of giving them that incentive. Hey, come on down, let's clean up our parks. And, you know, again, I think a lot of it comes down to education and making them more aware and letting them see what a difference they can make and what that difference is, you know, when you have the clean park. All right, so do we want to have some sort of a decision made as far as the carry and carry out, or do we need to discuss that more in terms of kind of a hybridization of it, you know, with more receptacles, maybe at different parks?
Well, I think the committee could recommend a hybrid approach to the governing body. They could consider that. Obviously, they have their contract, which they have to, you know, they're beholden to, at least for the time being, unless they're looking to make some large legislative changes in that regard. But the committee can make a recommendation for the council governing body to consider a hybrid approach. And if they're open to it, they can certainly lean on us for ideas and support and things like that as to what parks might that might work in. But I think they would have to be open to that idea in the first place.
Can I make a suggestion? Before we do that, maybe DJ, you and I could meet with the borough administrator and talk about what our options exactly are. How can we increase trash pickup? How can we modify some of the existing trash cans so that they're large enough and convenient enough to accept trash that doesn't fit into these traditional small holes? So before we actually make a recommendation to council, let's find out what it is we can do as a committee. There's some great ideas here. The hybridization of carry in, carry out, the fact that trash cans don't fit the trash, the fact that we need better cleanup at the community center. And then maybe you and I could come back and report to the committee and say, this is what we can do. How are we going to use this to the best advantage for our parks? I don't know if you think that's.
I think it's a better idea to have something that's a little bit more sort of, fleshed out and targeted.
Okay, okay.
No, I'm agreeing with what you're saying, Betsy. Have, something that's a little bit more, let's get the input from, the parties concerned and then move forward with that. How does the rest of the committee feel about that?
I
Hey,
agree.
it's Meg.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Meg.
Okay, I was just gonna say, I'll jump in for a second. I don't disagree. I just think that, this problem's been going on for so long, and I'd rather see us try something or trial something. And, whether it's suggesting or recommending to the governing body, we suggest you try this first, or saying, here are the 3 things that we've come up with. Let's try something, because something needs to change. It's clear it's been going on too long. And the only reason I would hesitate to delay any further is that the problem's going to persist. And so if we can, and I realize the different parks and dock and everything is a little bit different, but perhaps if we can say, here's our recommendation for these, 2 different areas, let's try it, see how it goes, and revisit it. And in the meantime, we can talk about other solutions. So my thought is just that we, make a strong recommendation to do something.
Okay, I think that's where we want to head. The question is what, right? If we're going to try to hammer that out now, or does it make more sense to get some of the ideas together, get it out to committee? We certainly don't have to wait until our next committee meeting to come to some sort of a consensus. But I think, we need to have some idea of what are these recommendations, because I'm not really sure we have anything concrete at this point.
I think the discussion of meeting with the borough administrator and seeing just what's possible, what we can do within the contract and within manpower and things like that is a good way to go.
I agree. The only thing I'd like to add is that for Mccarter, I don't necessarily think that's the best place to do in and out, because you're losing out on a teaching opportunity, because a lot of the children right now are having snack and other potential meals outside. And this is a good opportunity for the teachers to be teaching them while they're young to make sure to put things away in the trash. And being that they're out there as well, I think it's more beneficial to have trash cans there for the children to utilize. So if we're going to try a hybrid, I definitely think Mccarter should be off the table in that regards, and maybe we experiment with a different one.
Makes sense.
Noted.
Yeah. As I say, I think it's important to tie education into this as well.
All right. So Mark, just want to, tie it up with the committee to a yay or nay with the 5 committee members to have a discussion with the borough administrator to see what we can do with the trash, and we'll report back.
Okay. Yeah. So do we have an agreement on having some discussion with borough administrator, getting a better handle on what we might be able to do in conjunction with DPW, and then making some decisions as to what our recommendations would be, which could include a hybrid approach?
Agreed.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. Any opposed? Abstain. All right, so let's go with that.
Sounds good. Before we move on, I know we have a few members of the public here. We talked about the trash at the community center. The next item on the agenda is going to be the multi-purpose wall, and then we're going to speak about capital funding for possibly at the community center. Are there any members of the public that have any additional items they'd like to touch on before we opt out of this?
Yeah, actually, I just wanted to say, in case some people are here specifically to talk about the fields and the trash and everything, and then may have other things to do as this meeting carries on and you're going to leave, I just want to thank you at this point, for your input and for joining us.
Hey, Mark, this is Chief. Thank you for having me. I don't think you need me for anything else. So it was good talking to you, and let's catch up. Thank you.
Sounds good. Thanks, Joe.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
All right. So multi-purpose wall.
let's see. We've got Jamie Stozer with her hand raised.
I just wanted to say thank you guys for having us. This was awesome. I have so many text threads right now blowing up, thanking me for telling them to be here. I have a lot of friends that I spoke on behalf of tonight. And I just want you to know, Mark, that both of my boys are behind me. You can't see them, but they can see you, and they're freaking out that that's Mark from Rolling Hills. So I just wanted you to know that part. So wave to Sam.
I'll go put on my blue shirt.
Yes. So thank you guys so much for having us. Thank you for paying attention to this part of town. I know you guys have so much on your plate, so I really appreciate you listening to our concerns, and a pleasure to be here to say them out loud instead of on a public forum on Facebook. And the last thing I just wanted to say is one of the girls in my threads that I'm on said a really good suggestion too, and I can summarize some of this for you, DJ, and just email it over, but that there's a group at RFH, a special services program there, that might be another group to tap into for extra hands. So that could be mobilized to do extra, stuff around town. Apparently they had them cleaning toilets and windows at the high school during COVID. It's just another group like the Key Club idea of being able to mobilize a group of people. If the DPW is not able to allocate the time and energy to this, then there, might be some other groups, whether it's through the Key Club or through the special services team at RFH, that maybe could be a really easy fix to just get them in there and help clean it up.
Okay, perfect.
Hey, Jamie.
Thanks, guys.
All right, thanks again.
Okay. All right. So we made it to the multi-purpose wall part of the discussion. Councilwoman Chris O'Keefe, I don't know if you have an update as far as that goes. I know there's some other things going on in town at the moment, but feel free to weigh in here.
Sure, yeah, I'll jump in. I will give a brief update. What I have learned, what I've learned since our last call is that the group that had raised the money and had received the initial governing body approval several years ago to install a multi-purpose wall at Fairhaven Fields did go back to explore what could be achieved. Rich, our Gardella, the borough engineer, was able to determine that the curbing, the concrete curbing and the turf could be eliminated, which was huge savings, and that the turf would be replaced with the stone dust type material. So it's a big savings. They also were able to determine, and again, is Borough Attorney Cannon still here?
I don't think so.
Okay, he escaped us. That's fine. There was a determination that we could, I'm sorry, I need to refer back to him on this issue, but there was a determination that they were able to get concrete materials donated and or they were able to obtain them at a reduced cost. And I realized that there is a potential law that we need to abide by and manage through, and whether that would mean that the concrete company donates it provides it at the reduced cost to the 501c3, and then they donate it as a material, or if we need to get approval from the contractor, and how that would work, because typically the contractor that is awarded the bid receives, provides the labor and the materials. So that's a hiccup we would have to work out. But as I mentioned in previous meetings, the RFH Board of Ed was able to take the entirety of the project as a donation in kind, which I think was the intention initially, and they were kind of piggybacking off of that model. I've been told by council that that's not a viable way to move forward, but perhaps if there's a way to deal with the materials, it's a pretty big savings. So their update to me on the budget cost, overall budget cost, was, I'm just looking here, I just received it a little bit ago. This was through Spiesel, which is the engineer that they were using. So if the concrete is able to be acquired at the discounted rate, it's a savings of $15,000 plus the elimination of the concrete curb is a reduction of the 24,000. Replacing the turf with the stone dust is about a $10,000 savings. So the revised overall cost would be more, instead of 109,000, which was what it was at, I'm blanking on the term. Is it fair wage? Someone remind me, what was the term?
Prevailing wage.
Thank you, prevailing wage. Thank you, Betsy. That it would be more like 82,000. And that includes the contingency cost that is, you know, a ball, you know, it's the 18,000 contingency cost that is an unknown. You know, they put that in, they'll build that in there for any change orders, unexpected things that come up during the construction of the project, that sort of thing.
You said that,
and typically
contingency was included in that 82-ish, or wasn't? I didn't catch that.
What was?
Was that contingency that you mentioned included in that? Yeah. Okay.
It was, and typically, and I think DJ and Councilman Kutch, and I'm sure Mark and others who've had experience with this type of stuff before, these budgets are typically a bit over, and that the bids, when the project is bid itself, do come in a bit lower. So, so with that in mind, and if memory serves me, Long Live Lax, the group that had raised this money for this project, had somewhere between, I think I want to say it was $47,000, $40,000 and $50,000 that they were willing to support this project with. We had talked about additional avenues for community support for this. And I know, you know, there was the roughly 20,000 we had on the community appeal. And I know the next agenda item we're going to be talking about is capital funding for rec initiatives and projects. And I know that, you know, the number that the borough administrator had, you know, suggested, or at least was proposing, or what, you know, what projects, initiatives do we want to pursue, was a number that would, in my estimation, would allow us to pursue this project, even if no additional funds were raised, and we were able to do this project with the 82,000 and the balance that Long Live Lax does not provide, that the borough would be able to support for this great project. So that's my update. Did I miss anything? I know I kind of jumbled through this because I just got this update a couple minutes ago. Does anybody have questions?
No, I know that, thanks for providing that. And I know that concrete piece is to be determined as far as how that can potentially be written in to the bid and things like that. So it's a fair process.
Yeah.
And I know that Greg Can is going to weigh in on that.
I have a question. The updated figures that you received, are they 2021 or are they 2019, 2018, when the project was first presented to the Recreation and Parks Committee?
These were updates directly from Spiesel, which had prepared and drawn up the plans for the organization.
Right, originally. But we still don't know if those donations, we're going to be able to accept it, or how that's going to work in terms of financing. Is that correct?
Right. So the thought would be that if the borough is willing to move forward, rec committee makes a recommendation, governing body approves it and authorizes the spending for the balance of the project, then Long Live Lax would essentially, I think, would be turning their funds over to the borough, you know, earmarked for this project. And then, you know, I guess at that point, Colleen would be able to certify to the fact that what the borough has authorized plus what the borough has received as a donation earmarked for this project, then we would be able to proceed.
Megan, that's how I was able to do it for the toddler playground.
Okay.
I have two concerns. Number one, before I personally would vote for this project, I'd really want to know more concrete numbers. I would like to know that the donation that's being made for the materials can be accepted and used by the borough. My second concern is when this project was first presented to Parks and Recreation and was accepted and approved, was that it wasn't going to cost the town any money, that they were going to totally subsidize the project. And I agree, at the time, they weren't aware of prevailing wage, which really increased the cost of the project a great deal. But if we're looking at, we haven't heard back yet from the bike track at Mccarter. We're looking at a slide that needs to be replaced at the community center. And DJ, is it around $24,000 to replace that slide? What was the amount?
So it depends exactly what we want to do. If you're just looking at replacing a slide, or if you're looking to replace a whole apparatus, which in my opinion, I think is probably the more cost efficient thing to do, given the age, and there's been some different surface cracks in different areas of it that we've kind of fixed in-house to where it's still safe. But at this point, I would say you want to replace that apparatus, and playground aficionado Tina could speak to this later on. We'll talk about capital and community center, which I think we're getting into now. But yeah, somewhere between like 20 to 50, even more, depends on the type of apparatus, how big you want it to be, what you want to service, age groups, things like that. But yeah, it's somewhere around that 25,000 would be like the minimum. But yeah, there's definitely some discussion we had with that.
So I guess, oh, go ahead. So I'm
I
sorry.
just want to say, I'm not sure that we can afford everything that we want to do. I think maybe we need to prioritize. We certainly can't afford to do all three projects. There's just no money for us to do all three projects. And
So
go ahead.
my thoughts are this, certainly I would like to hear the response concerning the bike playground at Mccarter Park. My understanding is that even if we were to receive that grant today, it's a project we could pursue. Usually would not have a deadline to go to bid until sometime in 2022 or even 2023. Sometimes they have a 2-year grant window. And so that gives us some latitude to pursue this project now with the money that's become available to the borough as a donation to pursue this specific project. And then if we do receive that grant, we can pursue that still within that grant award window. And I would think that with the capital funds that plus the community appeal money, if the governing body does in fact approve and authorize that spending, that's $120,000 we would have to work with. So I see that as important that we are spending money on our rec initiatives and we are pursuing them. We talked earlier in this year about what we wanted to work on. These were the top 2 projects. And I even think we could address the slide within the scope of those funds. So I feel strongly that we should move forward. I believe that Long Live Lax will go elsewhere if this governing body and this committee does not want to support it. And, we've been talking to them again. This project was old, and I hear your concern, Betsy, that they were initially going to fund the whole thing. They were under the impression, wrongly understood, I don't know, that it would proceed in the same fashion that this similar type project proceeded at the RFH Board of Ed. And unfortunately, that's not the case. And so we still can look at it as a donation to the borough earmarked for this specific project. And I don't see any reason that the borough should not support this financially. I think it would be a great addition to Fairhaven Fields. It would be something that can be used by a multitude of sports teams, adults, children alike. You could use it together with other people. You can use it alone. And so I think it would just be a great addition. And I think it would be such a shame if they went and built it in some other town because we were unwilling to commit what feels like not a massive amount of money for a rec initiative. 35% of Fairhaven's residents are under the age of 18. Not that that's the only demographic we can hit with this, but our children are obviously important and a lot of the reason that people move here. But I can also see this absolutely servicing grown-ups who like to kick the ball against the wall, throw the lacrosse ball, play tennis, pickleball. All of those things will be met. So it kind of spans the ages and would serve a lot of people. I just really am concerned that they are growing exhausted by the continued discussion. I think they've been quite patient. They've gone back and gotten these updates, and I'm glad to provide you with the email with all of those financials and the worst case scenarios in the event we can't use the reduced concrete costs, what that would look like. I absolutely agree. We need to understand the figures 100%. But, you know, again, they've worked diligently to get us additional information and bring those costs down. And I'm in favor of moving this initiative forward and presenting it to the governing body, but obviously with the, you know, approval of the rec committee, if that's the committee's desire.
Hey, Meg, I would definitely love for you to be able to share those numbers, you know, with us so we can, yeah, I tried to write some stuff down, but I'd, you know, like to see it, I guess, in a more organized fashion than my scribble on the page here. I guess my other concern though is we need to be careful unless there's something I don't know about putting the cart before the horse, because, you know, we're talking about the idea that the capital funding is going to allow us to kind of move ahead with this. But I mean, that capital funding is by no means a done deal, correct?
So the capital funding, we have, this is the time of year where we're looking at the capital funds. Last night we had the capital bond ordinance where we are transferring I'll say an earmarked $215,000 out of our typical capital fund annually for some smaller acquisitions and purchases. And then following that, we look toward a bond ordinance. And the bond ordinance has to outline, you know, generally or specifically what it is we are wanting to include in that capital bond ordinance. This is a type of project that is capital. It is a long-term investment. It's something that will last for any specific number of years. And it's appropriately within a bond ordinance. And so this is the time of year where we're starting to look at what are those capital needs this year that we want to pursue. And so in order for the governing body to outline that, you know, you can generally say rec initiatives and projects, but obviously, you know, if we have the ability to define it more to the governing body, it makes it easier for them to say, okay, we know these numbers, rather than 100, you know, just blindly saying X amount of dollars. Then we can really redefine it. And I think it's a better approach for spending and budgeting, and to be able to explain to residents and taxpayers, yes, I supported this capital bond ordinance to go into debt on these specific projects because this is expected to last 15 years and you're going to use it today. And then whoever moves here on year 12 or 14 is also going to use it. And so they will be, you know, that'll be included in that part of their tax payment when we're paying off that debt. So I prefer to look at a bond ordinance and know exactly what it's for. And so that's why this is the time of year that Teresa, the borough administrator, has pushed out some of these placeholders to the committees to talk about this type of spending.
Right. I guess my concern is that I get all that. It's that, just as you said, it's kind of a placeholder. So I don't feel that that's a guarantee that that's what we're going to get. So my concern is that I know when we prioritize things, you know, even earlier the year or end of last year, we certainly had the wall as our like number 1 or 2. But again, I think that was with the idea that we weren't going to be having to quite put in as much money as it looks like we are, because it sounds like even, you know, if we can get everything that we want and the discounts and whatever, you know, we're looking anywhere from 32 to 35,000 that we would have to put in from the committee, which means definitely we have to rely on this capital funding for some of that money, because it would totally wipe out what we have available. And then again, if we can't maybe get the 15K or so in concrete materials, now you're looking at what, 47 to 50 that we have to come up with. So I'm just concerned that I don't know. I guess I'm just always a little cautious about saying, yeah, we can do this, and then we'll worry about whether or not we're getting the money after. You know, we're talking a placeholder here, so I don't know what that means.
Well, I think I hear you. And I think that's why we have to put it to the governing body to say the rec committee is recommending and approving this project subject to the funding piece. And I understand that. And I agreement 100%. It does come down to the numbers and can we do it? And is, you know, but it also might be the difference between, you know, some other spending, right? We should be spending on our rec initiatives. We haven't spent any money on our rec initiatives this year. Do we keep our parks green and we try to keep them clean? Yes. But as a project, we haven't done anything this year. And I'd be remiss to say that's not one of the most important things I hear from everyone in Fairhaven. They really enjoy going to our parks and having these unique things. And I think these two ideas, the bike park at Mccarter, it's a great idea. I love it. This multi-purpose wall, it's a great idea. It's unique. I'm not aware of them being at other locations. There's been a lot of response to this committee and concern about the wall that's no longer going to be over at Community Center Field. So, and we can look at it as we're going to have to spend some money to achieve this, but we can also look at it as we're really getting a really great opportunity because a significant portion of the project is being donated by a group who has provided the borough with this opportunity.
I have to say, I feel at least somewhat more comfortable with the idea that we're saying, hey, here's what we want to do and presenting it to the governing body with the idea that, hey, it's subject to funding. Because then at least this way, we kind of have that, hey, what happens if we don't?
Is the entire, and I don't have a vote, so it doesn't matter, but is the entire committee in favor of this? We're talking about a lot of money that we're going to have to go into debt for. And we've got the conversation going on about the community park over by the community fields. I mean, that's going to take some money to fix it up. We don't have enough money to do that, do the lax wall and do the bike track. So we may have to prioritize and let something go because we certainly don't have the money to do all of that.
I'd like to hop in for just a sec. Is it possible for us, I know that Councilman Christopher Keith mentioned the placeholder. In my discussions with the borough administrator was somewhere in the range of $100,000 or so. That was to be considered. Is it worth it, or does it make sense for this committee to request that that's a higher number so that the multi-purpose wall and the bike playground and the community center playground could be properly upgraded? If that number isn't.
DJ, you're talking about a huge amount of debt.
I'm throwing out ideas. I'm asking the committee.
Yeah.
I want them to be aware of all possible options.
Right. That's a lot of money to go into debt for. And
but I also think
$1,000 was over a period of time. It wasn't over a 12-month period that we're talking about. It was
important to realize that our capital.
It is an awful lot of money to just, not have, we don't have a lot of figures really that were, they have worked on this quite a bit and have gone back and forth to the committee, but there's too many unknowns for me to want to be in favor of it at this point now. I mean, we went for a grant for the bike park, and then delaying that, especially when residents have heard about it and are excited about it to 2023 for another project, it doesn't seem right to me. And especially, it's nice to have a surplus and not have to go into debt. You have residents, if you look on the Facebook pages every day, that are complaining about garbage cans and things that we could easily remedy with the money that we already have. So I tend to agree that we can't do everything, and it's a huge amount of money. When you present yourself to a committee and say that you have all the funding, it's one thing, but then, and I was totally in support of that when that was what the case was. I understand there are things that were out of their control, but at this juncture now, there's too many unknowns for me to support it.
So does everybody feel comfortable then telling them, no, we can't do it? Because I think that's kind of the point that we're reaching. And my concern is, I hear what you're saying and I agree, but if the borough doesn't spend money in the bond ordinance on this, for example, it may go somewhere else. And I don't know the answer to that. I haven't seen that bond ordinance yet. I'm not on the finance committee, but what I can say is our bond ordinances are not small. They're not $200,000 or $300,000. They're significant because they are capital expenditures. And that's the upshot of a capital expenditure, is that it's paid off over a period of time. So I hear what people are saying, but I also think we have to keep in mind the titration of spending. We've done nothing this year. Again, And I'm not suggesting we delay the bike program, but if we don't even receive that grant, is that a project that we can spend for it? Well, I believe that quote was 72,000. Did I mistake that?
It's less than that. It's less than 50,000.
It was less than 50. Okay.
What is the
And I want to
downside
keep
to
in mind
this
too, we
law?
also have the 20,000 from community appeals. So, you know, if we were to take the borough administrator's suggestion of 100,000 for rec and 20,000 of the community appeals, we actually have a lot of money in my estimation, although compared to the overall borough municipal budget, it is a very small amount that we would be dedicating to rec initiatives, an extremely small amount. And a lot of our costs are fixed, but I still think it's important to take stock of the fact of how important rec, our green spaces, and the physical outlets are for our community. And so, you know, with that, I think it's important. And again, I think it's important that we give some sort of directional, and maybe we pass it to the governing body for consideration with, we may lose this if we don't pursue it. Are you comfortable with that? Because we haven't been able to make a decision.
Hey, Councilman Chris O'Keefe, I just need to give not some overview, but just touch on what I was tasked with from the borough administrator was to get feedback from the committee tonight on that $100,000 placeholder. Essentially, is that for 2021? Is that does the committee essentially approve that amount? I know that the finance committee has to ultimately approve it, but does the committee feel that that's an adequate amount for 2021? Are they asking for a bigger amount, or are they asking for, you know, $100,000 for the next some odd years? What does the committee want? Hearing that number, hearing these different items that are being prioritized, being considered. So I just don't want to lose sight of the fact that I do need to respond back to the borough administrator on that.
It's a lot of money.
Based on the analysis that I did for everyone and provided, the recreation committee gets less than 1% of the overall budget. We get like 0.017%. And obviously a lot of our stuff is super aging. So my perspective on it is that in my head, we're going in circles. We already voted. We said it was a priority. I think it's up to council to decide whether or not they want to pursue this or not. And the budget that they gave is, I'm super happy that they're even considering giving us $100,000. And then that we also, on top of that, have 20K. $100,000 though for 2021 is excellent, but to do all the improvements, if you look at the proposal that I put together previously, over 5 years, $100,000 per year would be the ideal scenario to get our parks to a safe place where they need to be, because the community center has been in need for a while. DJ, as you mentioned, we've been just patching up some of the cracks that we've seen. I walked through the community center the other day with one of the playground reps, and he's really not deemed for that play structure to be there. He's like, it's really not safe anymore. Your poles are really loose. You have loose bolts. You're going to need to make a lot of replacements here. You're better off just replacing the whole thing. Granted, he is a salesman, but he's not. This is the 4th time that I've worked with him on different projects. He's very honest and forthcoming. And I don't think he's not trying to like sell me on this. But DJ, to your point, if we had to vote, I would say to bring it in front of council, let them make the decision whether or not they think, because $50,000 is a huge amount. So the fact that someone wants to donate that, I think it's worthy to pursue, especially thinking that no one ever comes to our rec committee meetings. And the biggest comments that we have gotten in the last year is that multi-purpose wall going away at the community center. So I think it's something that our community really does want. And then in regards to the budget, I'm very happy with the 100K, and I would love to see that for the next 5 years.
I think that's really kind of the question that we need to answer tonight, so that DJ can go back and say, yeah, you know what, we would love to have you put that in as the placeholder in the hopes that that's in fact what we get. Or do we say, hey, you know, we've kind of presented a plan to you, and you can see that, our funding that we'll need over the next several years, would be more than that, and we ask for more, that's really, I guess, more of the question. I honestly would feel comfortable with, hey, this is something we've never been offered before, and something that if we can use it properly, I think can sort of set the table for having it become a more consistent thing. The idea that if we can take that and we can do some good things with it, and then be able to point to that, for next time around and say, hey, see, here's what we've been able to do. We can at least then, get that funding again, maybe even get more funding in the future. So I think it's kind of that first step towards hopefully achieving some of the goals that we want in terms of long term. But that's what we need to let DJ be able to go back and say. I think the wall question is kind of contingent on what happens with that, whether we get the money that is being considered. So kind of like what you were saying, Meg, the idea that, making that happen is really subject to the funding that they're proposing we might see. But again, I think the first thing, and everybody else just sort of weigh in on this, is, do we want to say, yeah, thanks, we would love to have you put that in as a placeholder, and hopefully that's what we get. Or, do we get bold and say, oh, we want some more, and say we want 200,000 and hope for 150. Now, I'm happy we're getting this offer, and I think we can use it as a stepping stone. But again, what's the rest of the committee's thoughts?
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. Would it make sense is there a way, and I don't know, council, if you would know, for us to see if the 100,000 is actually a real thing, if it gets approved, and then the committee could decide, all right, well, we definitely want to put some towards the cross wall or the multi-purpose wall. We want to put a good chunk towards the community center because that playground's in disarray, and then we can kind of go from there once we know what that number looks like. Is that familiar?
Yes, that's great. I just, when it's an unknown like that, I get a little wary. That's all.
Some of those numbers are big unknown numbers. What's the timing, I guess, on that? I'm getting an answer back on, hey, you got it or you don't.
My understanding, and the council members might know more, is that if we go back to the governing body and say, yep, the 100,000 would be great, we love this, we recommend that or request this for the next 5 years or whatever the number is we're talking about, and they approve it and they bond it, which could be done in my discussion with Teresa in October, November, then at that point we could go out and officially start getting quotes and things like that once we decide how we want to spend that money. I know that to Councilwoman Christopher Keith's point, there has to be a specific or a generally specific reason that we're bonding that, whether it's parks or whether it's playgrounds, things like that. But I think
It has to be dedicated.
Right. If we know that, yes, we would like that 100,000 for the parks, then I believe at that point we could go and decide for exactly what we would want to use that for, if that's correct. Councilman Mccarter?
Actually, could I ask Meg a question for you, if you have a sense or a feel for it? Yeah. I think, we would love to do the wall. We would have liked to do it certainly in the context as how it was originally presented. But you said the possibility of them needing to or wanting to go somewhere else. Do you have a sense for if they need to wait because we need to find out about this? Would they be willing to do that?
I don't have a good sense. I think that they've been very patient, and I don't know if they're exploring other opportunities. I haven't had that conversation with them. I know they had their heart set on this taking place in Fairhaven. The group that raised these funds have a strong connection to Rumson and Fairhaven and feel that it's the most appropriate place because all the sports that would benefit from this type of facility are played at Fairhaven Fields. I can certainly ask the question. Again, I just, express my concerns that we'd be, missing out on an opportunity if they did decide to proceed in another municipality.
Yeah, and I think in a perfect world, if we could get that clarity, either if it's from our borough attorney, whoever it has to be from, where we know what those exact costs are going to be, and we know what exactly the committee is getting from the town as far as the bonded money, then we can actually start, I think, to make some decisions where we know, all right, it's 35,000 that they're short. We've got 100. We can dedicate X amount to that project, X amount of community appeals. We can worry and tackle the community center. But I think with all the unknowns, I think the committee is kind of reluctant to make a strong move either way. Is that fair?
Yeah, and I'm glad I can put those numbers together and circulate them tomorrow. And, I can let them know that we're just gonna have to wait longer. I just wonder if there's an idea that if we go to council and say we are interested in the full $100,000, here are, the couple of things that we would be diverting or focusing the funds on, if that would be helpful to them.
I think that makes a lot of sense. And I think how I read the situation with the committee is, I think they're ready to do that. I don't want to speak for them, but I think that's kind of what Kate was getting at. And I know that if we can say, hey, we'd love the 100,000, we know what we want to put it towards. It's, these potential 3 items, depending on how some of the other details come in, but that's where we want to allocate those funds, and we're ready to put that money to work.
All right, so I think we've got 2 things here. The first is we need to give DJ an answer. Is accepting that potential offer of the 100,000 in the capital funding what we want to do? So people can just,
Yes.
So show of hands. Do we want to say, yeah, well, we'd love to have it? 2 hands?
Yes.
All right, so DJ, that's your charge then, to let them know that, yeah.
Okay, is there a request for that same repeated amount for X amount of years, or are we just saying thanks?
Well, I would love to see that just, continue to roll on. And as I said, if we can get that and then show some good usage of it, then it's easier to go back and say, hey, look what you gave us, look what we did. Let's keep that ball rolling.
And please keep in mind, that's not money that's already been allocated in a budget. That's money the borough is going to have to go out and borrow. So we are going to have to pay for that. It's not free. So every year, whatever you ask for is going to be borrowed money. And that all feeds into your taxes.
Right.
I think at the same
I would
time
hope
that
that
we're in such a need for all these upgrades to be made that we're
No, there are.
money
There
one
are.
way or the other.
But I also think, our budget really isn't 0.017%. We get a lot more than that. None of that includes maintenance on the fields. It doesn't include DJ salary. So Parks and Recreation does get more money than what is just reflected in that small percentage. We do have a much bigger budget.
But it's not enough to upgrade the current things.
Right.
that
I'm
we
not
have
saying
right
it
now.
is. I'm not saying it is. I'm just saying we do get more money than what is just.
But I think also too, we also have just an obligation to the residents, because especially when it comes to the community fields, they've been complaining for like the last 5 years about the tennis courts. And we're like, when we do the police station and the DPW,
Right.
that will be a focus. We'll focus on that. And
Right.
it's been pushed back and pushed back. And if we're not planning for that money we need to figure out a plan to get that money so that we can fulfill that promise to the residents that we would update the
I
community.
absolutely agree with you, but no one ever thought of a lax wall until that group of kids and their coach and their parents came to rec and said, we need a place to build the wall and we're going to pay for it. So it's not as if rec went out and solicited funds, was able to manage to raise $50,000 knowing they were going to come up with the rest of the money. All of that was presented to us as we just need a place to put the lax wall. Nobody at the time that was presented even knew what a lax wall was. So I think we have to keep that in mind too.
Okay. All right, well, I think we answered the question that you need to report back on, DJ.
Yeah, so I'm going to report back. Yep. So I'll report back that, yes, we would certainly be open to that 100,000, ideally on an annual basis. And we know where we want to put that money to work. It's going to be in the projects of the community center, playground, the multi-purpose wall, and are we including the bike playground in that as well? Or is that separate?
I think some of that also depends on where that grant goes.
Right, depending on that grant and depending on numbers that come back from the cross wall or the multi-purpose wall will determine where those
You have
funds
to
are.
wait and see what the grant is, if we get it. I don't
Right.
think we're prepared to pay for the whole thing without the grant. I don't think.
Right, correct.
Yeah.
I think we do have an opportunity to partner with the school though, for that, especially since it's at Mccarter. So I think
Mhm.
we have alternative means to fund that project potentially, should the grant not work out.
Okay. Now, again, I guess all that sort of falls into place when we find out about, the capital funding and then the grant. I'm sorry, Kate, were you saying something?
Sorry, when will we find out about the grant?
So it's funny, not really funny, but we were supposed to hear back in June. We emailed them in June and July, and they said it's super backed up for a myriad of reasons. We should know by the end of September, which is a really long time to have to wait and sit on our hands. But I know that they received a ton of proposals. So I sent a follow-up email again this week to see if there's any movement. I haven't heard of any awards being announced. They don't reach out to the folks who don't get the awards. But as of today, still no announcement. So, unfortunately,
DJ,
still waiting.
just can you hear me okay? Just a quick question.
Yeah, Kev.
Because it's been a while. What from the committee, where did the wall fall in the priority list when we had the survey and all voted?
It was either one or two. I'm not sure.
I thought it was
Okay.
two. The first thing was a swing and then two.
Okay. Okay, just wanted to clarify.
So are we done with capital funding? Have we covered that?
Yeah, and I think so.
Yep.
Probably
Yeah,
an interest
so
of time.
I'll
I wanna
report
keep
back.
moving.
I'll
So
report
DJ,
back.
just to be clear, you're going to say that we're good with the 100K and we would like that repeated for the next 5 years to make all of our obligations.
Correct,
Cool.
correct.
Just
And
wanted to
then
be clear.
hopefully,
Thank
if it does get approved by town council, hopefully we'll know by the next meeting, not guaranteed. And then from there, we can plan on how we want to specifically allocate those funds. And at that time, hopefully we'll know a lot more details about all the multiple projects that are being considered.
Okay.
All right, so we'll move on. Fall events. So Halloween parade is back. The Halloween egg hunt is back. So I know definitely have some volunteers here who will be helping out with that. Looking forward to it. It's gonna be on Sunday.
I love that we call it a hunt. I mean, it's just right out there on the field.
Right. It's pretty much, yeah, open your eyes and go get it.
It is great though. It's great.
Oh, it's wonderful. As long as you're not in the way when they all go charging out.
Yeah, so October 24th, the traditional Sunday before Halloween. So info will be going out for that. If folks here want to help out and judge, we do use Keep volunteers, but could always use some members to help judge as well, the costumes and all those different things. So the hunt is at 3 p.m. and then right after at 3:30 p.m. the parade will start. We're trying the afternoon this time. I know I looked back at my notes from 19 and there were a lot of different activities that were going on in the morning and things like that. So we'll give the afternoon slot a try, see if it's any better. I know this time of year there's a million activities going on every day. So we'll see how this one works
So
out.
we're doing the hunt and the parade, correct?
Correct.
And then is there, like, what's happening after the parade? I mean, traditionally, we all know what's been done, but, because of potential limitations and stuff, are we talking about having a big gathering at the firehouse or just a parade, then it sort of dissipates?
Yeah, so pretty much going back to a normal parade. Have the parade, get down to the fire department. There'll be some donuts and drinks and stuff like that.
I'm in.
Yeah, apple juice.
We had the
And,
fireman's fair. I mean, that worked out great.
True. Yep.
Yeah, so we'll announce the prizes down there and then people pretty much scatter and get back to their day. So
Okay.
yeah, we're looking forward to it. It's our first, I guess, big rec event in a while. So all hands on deck. We're excited for it. So
That's
very
good.
cool. And then I have the 100-mile club on here. Kate, Rachel, I don't know if there's any update on what you were thinking as far as some of these items. I know there was an email going around.
Basically, it's just, I mean, I could start working on it now. I'm having a baby on Friday, so we'll see.
Yeah,
But I'd
take
like
your
to do
time,
like
no rush.
mid-November would be a nice time. And I'd like to do it the way that I laid it out, but if people have an issue with prizes, I just think people will do a lot for a t-shirt. It kind of makes me laugh, but they really will. And I can have the art department at my company come up with a really good logo, which I could circulate and we could approve maybe prior to our next meeting. But I just want to see what people's thoughts were on it.
Are we getting sponsors like on that shirt and?
Yeah,
or
do we want to
sponsors?
do that? I mean, I'm happy to pay for the shirts. I could put like a small logo on the back for me and resources, but I could open it up to everyone. I could kind of, it's more easily streamlined if I keep it smaller to sponsors, but I don't want to give anybody else a, I don't want to make anybody mad regarding it.
And so we chatted just briefly on email. And where did we go with the idea that people are paying to participate?
So I think we should ask still. Yeah, I think we should say it's a $20 fee and have the whole $20 go to charity.
Oh, okay, so then look for the sponsors. So yeah, not split the $20, half charity, half t-shirt.
Yeah.
Okay.
Have everybody have it just go to charity. I think we won't do it as much, throughout the year. Maybe twice or 3 times versus we were rolling them a lot more frequently.
Yeah.
And then I know we had a question as to the time period. I wouldn't go more than 30 days because we can't with the app. But if you could achieve the 100 miles, but if you do it in 30 days, it's really an accomplishment, 3 miles a day.
No, I like that idea. Or yes, that made sense when you had suggested.
Yeah.
Or corrected that thought. Yeah. My only thing is prize things, which t-shirts, magnets, bumper stickers, whatever. But I think it's a great idea. But I think I should help because you're having a baby.
I'll be home a lot though. It gives me an excuse to get away from the 3 little kids. So please.
You'll run your 100-mile club as you run up and down the stairs.
The stairs, yeah. So what does everybody think? Should we open it up for all sponsors? Does it get sticky? How should we do it?
Yeah, the only thing with the sponsors is, I know we called the last one, it was a council president's walking challenge. I think if we just keep it as a group not officially affiliated with the town, sponsorships are a lot easier. I think once you affiliate it with the town, if it's through the rec department or through the whole council, whatever, I think then some of the sponsorship considerations have to be dealt with a little bit more carefully as far as making sure different businesses are offering it in town and things like that. So I'm not sure on the sponsorship piece how we want to handle that.
Do we not? Yeah.
What would it look like if we kept it as the committee and had no sponsors? I don't know, it's nice to give the Parks and Rec committee, not committee, but the Parks and Rec department a little press.
Yeah, I mean, I'm open to anything. But again, if it's with the Parks and Rec department, that means it's affiliated with the town and Borough Hall. And as far as sponsorships go, I know there can just be some checks and balances. We have to make sure we're making sure that we do. I can just run that by the borough administrator and see if she has any thoughts on that.
Yeah, maybe we could do that. I mean, I'd like to be able to put a little advertisement on there if I'm going to pay for it, just for, but if I can't, it's fine. I still will do it.
Right. Yeah. That's kind of where it gets a little bit hairy. If it's the town and it's presented by this one sponsor, then how come this other real estate agent in town didn't have the opportunity? And
yeah,
it gets a little political.
It does. Yeah, I totally see that.
Is a donation different than a sponsorship? So if you say, hey, donated by, your company or you or whatever, shirts are donated by.
Yeah, that still seems dicey, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I think it either has Kate's, logo on it, or
we don't have to do that though. I could still drop it in somehow.
Okay, why don't you just shoot me the 2 different options of having a sponsor or not, and I'll run it by the borough administrator and see what her thoughts are.
Okay.
If there's anything we have to check off.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay.
All right. Moving on, we got some new business.
Yeah. New business. So we touched on Halloween. We'll have our Veterans Day ceremony November 11th, which I believe is a Thursday. And then the tree lighting, we're just beginning initial discussions with the business association on. It's looking like we should be able to have a tree lighting this year, but haven't gotten really any conversations going yet. Any yay or nay on that? If we should offer that.
We should do it.
Yeah, I think we should do it.
DJ, can we just go back a moment to Veterans Day? Last year, remember, we distributed those signs for veterans. Honk a veteran lives here. Are we doing that again this year or skipping it?
That was more of a COVID thing because they couldn't come out to this actual ceremony.
Okay.
But again, we have the signs. We could put them out there.
Well, either you have to do everybody or nobody. You can't just.
Yeah.
So let's just we'll invite the veterans to the ceremony.
Gotcha.
Because it was virtual last year, right?
Right. Yeah, there was no in person. That was
Yeah.
kind of our thank you.
Yeah. And there were some unhappy people that didn't get their signs, so.
Yeah. But we found a lot of veterans in town that we didn't know about. So
We found a lot of veterans that we didn't know about, but they were really upset that they were not included. But we didn't have them on any list because usually veterans get a small, like a $200 deduction on their property taxes. So if you weren't receiving that deduction, the borough wasn't aware. So it was kind of a twofold thing. They found out they were entitled to a $200 or whatever it was deduction, and they got their sign. It was a win-win.
All right. Last item I have here is Mccarter Park. So, the civil school has put some bike racks over at Mccarter Park. After the construction, they kind of lost a little bit of space. So the bike racks at Mccarter Park are obviously helping the kids, the students who are riding their bike to school, things like that. One thing that they mentioned to me was they'd like a small shed, similar to what is at Sportsman's or a community center, that can be used for their gym equipment, their lunch equipment, things like that, recess, to be put at Mccarter Park, and the borough could also use that for our summer camp or any other equipment storage that we might need. We could kind of split that, the use of that shed. They would pay for it. They do everything. It's our property though, so they wanted to see if the committee was open to that idea, and then the borough administrator from there can deal with those details. So long and short of it is, Board of Ed is asking if they can put a equipment shed at the community at Mccarter Park that will be serving not just the Board of Ed, but the rec department, the parks department as well. So I just want to see if there are any thoughts on that.
And we'll dictate where it goes, or?
Yeah, just like anything, I'll meet over there with them. Borough engineer, DPW, we'll meet over and find a suitable location that makes sense.
I don't need to be negative, but it's such a nice park, a shed there. Couldn't a shed go in the back of the building, or I don't know. I would worry about a shed.
Can I make a suggestion? There's a shed at Sportsman's Field across the street from Knollwood. Take a look at it before you make a decision.
Okay.
Because
I think a lot of it's going to be based on, well, what does the shed look like? Where can it be placed? Will it sort of fit in?
but go take a look at this and see what you think.
Okay.
Because that's exactly what that shed is used for.
All right. So is this, I guess, something we need to put off as far as being able to give them an answer? What's their time frame, DJ?
Yeah, we just discussed it this past week, so I don't know if there's a specific time frame, but they were looking to see if the borough was open to the idea. If the committee thinks, hey, it's a beautiful park, it has a lot of space, but why put an 8x8 or an 8x10 shed up there if we don't have to? It's Board of Ed's equipment. They had a place to store it before, they could find a place to store it after.
They
the
just did a $15 million construction. They couldn't have built a storage shed.
Yeah.
Could have put an extra closet
That's,
with an
yeah,
outside
and it's,
door.
and just as Betsy says, I mean, looking at the one that Sportsman's Field, and yeah, so we just threw in what, 25 parking spaces worth of blacktop. You know, we lost that grass. I don't know. So
We
I
gave
think
them a
we all
lot.
have that. We all have
Yeah,
that
the
Willow
committee
Street
can certainly say
construction that's
that,
feeling a little big right now.
Yeah, the committee can certainly report that it doesn't behoove the committee to put that shed in, and that's what I'll report back. So that can definitely be brought back. I will note, kind of a side note, kind of related, we are going to have a storage pod there for the time being as they're finishing up the construction. But that is temporary, and so you will see that out there at the part of it.
DJ, they took on the responsibility to repair the grass and regrade whatever needed to be repaired after all that construction, right?
Yeah, so after when they can finally move back and school is normal, that pod will be removed. Same with the bike racks. That's supposed to be temporary. If there's any grass that dies off.
You know, that's a very nice area of the park. If we took down a lot of trees to grow grass, they're going to bring it back to its original condition, right?
That is what they told me, or that's what they told the borough. So is the committee saying that we don't see a need for that shed to take place at Mccarter Park? Is that what I'm hearing?
That's my gut.
I don't know whether there's a need or not. I think a lot of it sort of comes down to whether it just sort of works with what we want the function of the park to be and what's there.
The only spot I could.
You're going to put it as far away from you as you can, and then what's the purpose of it? It's not easily accessible. They're going to want something the minute the kids come out of school, they have access to it, and that's going to be right as you know in the forefront of the park.
Okay, so it's seeming like it's a nay on the storage shed for now. Is that fair to say?
Yes.
Yeah, perhaps we can revisit it and think about it. I'm kind of looking at the one now online at Sportsman.
I'm not a nay. Mark, sorry to interrupt you. I just think the only spot where it makes sense is that spot where they like open up the gates to like get all the leaves and everything out of there. Like I don't really see a great spot for it there. You know.
Yeah, and that spot, to your point, has to be accessible for any trucks, any vehicles.
Yeah, you could kind of hide it. You could hide it back in that corner, but that's got to be accessible.
I was almost thinking that we kind of need to see how all that finishes up and cleans up, when all that construction is done, and then might even have at least a better chance at having a good idea of, where it could possibly go and what it might look like. I'm not sure we can sort of make that choice right now.
Okay.
Only at the top.
Okay, so I'll report back with that information. Okay, sounds good. So that's all I have for tonight's meeting. Is there anything that anyone else would like to touch on?
If I can, wait, oh yeah. This is totally, I can just email you, DJ, and this would be an agenda item for another time, perhaps. But we were walking by Mccarter the other day, and my husband realized that if we had put in rails, just a low curb around the asphalt, the astroturf that has just been installed, it could increase its use for soccer in a different way. So an agenda item for the future would be to review how easy and what the cost would be of just putting in railroad tie curbs around that.
Okay. Sounds good. I think I know what you're saying too.
Allow for bumpers essentially around that.
Right. Okay. Definitely something we can maybe even meet out there and talk about.
All right. Any other comments, thoughts, concerns? All right. Well, it's been a long one. We had a lot to discuss. Our next meeting is set for the first Tuesday of October, so it's going to be the 5th. We're still all good with the 6:30 time frame. I know we had talked about whether or not that might shift as we sort of move out of the summer months into the, the fall. 6:30 good for everybody?
Okay, by me.
My husband goes back to the city, so my kids might be a little bit more involved in our meetings, but if it works for everybody, 6:30 is fine for me.
No, we're all about the kids.
I'm with Tina. The nighttime struggles become more real in the school year, but 6:30 works for everybody. We can keep that. If everybody was interested in pushing it later, I'm also okay with that.
Okay, well, I guess maybe let's see how that works out and see how much difficulties it does introduce for you, and then we can certainly, if you're like, nah, this isn't going to work, we can make adjustments.
6:30 is fine with me, and I'm sure this is something that everybody else has thought, but our Zoom conversation, rather than in person, specifically correlates to our meetings, like doubling in time. So we might want to work on tightening them up. I know they've all been important, but we used to keep our meetings really tight when they were in person. And we might want to think about how to get back there.
Yeah, I agree. This is definitely a long one. I think the June one was like an hour and the last one was a little bit longer. But yeah, we could definitely work on shortening them up a little bit, get it back to that hour and a half time frame.
Is there anything sort of, I guess, borough protocols in place that are keeping us from getting back together live?
No, I mean, I know we spoke at, I think, the June or August meeting and talked about if we wanted to stay virtual, go in person.
Can I just tell you one thing? The Borough Council meets live now, and we've got huge challenges with FaceTime live stream, however you call it. We're really having problems with having the public participate. In this format, the public, it's very easy for them to, join in, leave when they have to. It's very convenient for them. That's just one thought.
Yeah, and we can alter as we go along. I will say we had 13 members of the public attend tonight, which we want to give everyone a chance to talk and go back and forth a bit. So this is definitely a lengthy one, but I think that's a good note that we should try to keep them as succinct as possible and pertinent to the information on the agenda when possible.
Yeah, I agree with Councilwoman Koch that it's nice to allow the public the option to join via Zoom and jump in for a couple minutes and make a couple comments or see a certain conversation agenda item and jump back out. So I agree with that, but I also echo Rachel's comment on the length of the meetings. One of my questions that I'm not clear on is as the rec committee, are we able to have more dialogue via email or outside of meetings?
Yeah, I don't
Not
think
that I'm
there's any.
suggesting we exclude the public. I'm just wondering if there is
you
a
don't-
way to
you don't
have more.
worry about quorum.
Yeah, there's no worries as far as quorum goes.
Okay. Yeah,
And
then I
also-
guess one way to address it would be to just have more back and forth via email or communication wise on certain topics in either in advance of the meetings or something of that nature.
We can also go by Robert's rules and limit to a 3-minute for participants to try and limit the conversation that way, but sometimes it doesn't seem fair.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we'll definitely keep those things in
Yeah,
mind.
let's-
And
We can make an effort to, keep things moving along, next time, see how successful we are at that. If we just can't seem to make it happen that way, then perhaps, we do something like implement Robert's rules or some, just time to talk as far as, I've drawn a blank on it because it's been that long a meeting.
We're actually doing what we didn't want to do. We've extended the meeting.
yeah, so let's end it.
All right. Well, we got a motion to adjourn.
I adjourn. Motion to adjourn.
Second? Kate's like, yes. All right.
Good night, everyone.
And we'll
Thank
see
you.
everybody on the 5th at 6:30.
Excellent. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, guys. All right. I had my phone overcharging, and so when I finally went back to go and get it, I saw your text.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Here, hold on. I'll give you a call if you want to follow up, but that's being
Sure.
recorded. I don't want to get into anything else.
Yep. Yeah, give me a call.